My name is Hailey, and this is my story.
Hailey, you're here.
I'm
You're
here.
here.
Yes,
In
so
from
excited.
Maui. You're here with the Narrow Collective. We thank you so much for being part of this
Yeah.
project. You've been a big supporter for a long time, and so I'm
Mhm.
glad that we could get this situated. So,
Yes, thank you for having me.
of course. So, of course, we want to know about your story and your walk with the Lord. But for those who don't know you, us, for example, we didn't know you at the beginning, but we knew that you were a prominent figure in the church. So, can you tell us a little bit about your story at Coin?
Yeah, I started going to Coin in 2021. I was at another church and I was just walking with the Lord and trying to figure out what was next. I feel like I was in this space with community where I just wanted something different, wanting more depth, wanting to feel known and know people deeper and I don't know, I wanted something closer to home because my church was a good 35-minute drive. So I was just praying about it, and my friend John, he was like, "Actually, I know a church in Chino, and it's super close to your house, and they just got a building, I think. And I know the pastor. I've met him a couple times, and you should go, and it's called Coin." And it's so funny because I went to college in San Dimas, and a couple of my friends from college were going to Coin at the time, and I had like heard about it, but didn't know that they were any type of correlated.
Mhm.
And so I was like, okay, he picked me up, and I was like, okay, but I want to get there kind of late because I don't want to meet anybody. I just want to go and hear the sermon, and then we'll go, you know? And he was like, "Okay." So we got there late and I walked in during worship. I knew the guy who was leading worship. I was like, "What? He goes here?" I saw my friend Sarah, and she and I went to college together, and she was like, "You're here. Like, what?" It was just this whole thing. And so I was like, "Wow." And halfway through the sermon, I don't even remember what Pastor Sam was preaching on, but it was one of those moments where I had just been in constant prayer throughout the whole time of me being there. And it was so sweet that right away the Lord was just like he almost just made everything feel just warm. Like it just felt like, when you walk into your grandma's house and it just feels so warm and it feels like home, and you know everybody and everybody knows you, and there's just so much love in the room. It felt exactly like that. And so I was like, "Pff, done deal." And so I that was my first Sunday, and I just kept going back ever since. It's crazy.
Nice,
hmm
nice. And how long ago was that?
That was in 2021. That was February 2021. Once things started to let up from COVID. And so
Mm.
that was like, okay, I want to find a church closer to here. And yeah, it was like that was my first church that I ended up trying, and I stayed. Yeah, and I've been there. I had been there ever since I moved to Maui. And
Mm.
so I was there from 2021 to 2025 or
Nice.
2024.
24.
Yeah.
Nice. Awesome. So prior to coming to Coin, um, what was your life with faith before that? I know you mentioned coming from like a different church. Did you
Mhm.
grow up in the church as a child, or when did that start for you?
Yeah, so my mom raised me in church till I was about 8 or 9, and then we moved to Chino when I was 8 years old. And so from there, our church was still in Whittier at the time, and so my mom was working in city industry, and so the driving back and forth 5 days a week to then having to do it 6 days a week for church, it just kind of got a lot for her, which understandable, especially with this traffic we have here. It's 2 hours. And so yeah, we ended up looking for a church in Chino, and it just kind of got harder. My mom, I think that there are certain things that you just desire for in a church community, and um, we didn't necessarily find what she was wanting. And so we went to a couple of different churches. We ended up going to this church called The Bridge for a little bit. And we were there, I think, the most consistent out of the churches that we found, but ultimately we stopped going altogether. And that just wasn't the culture of our home. My family, my mom would say like we're Christians in our home, but it was more just like morally. That was, we were morally standard Christian family. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And so, but we didn't go to church for a good chunk of time until we'd go on Easter. We'd go on during the holidays. So Christmas, Easter, we'd
Mhm.
go, and maybe a random Sunday here and there, but it wasn't any type of consistent during the year. And one Easter, it was my senior year of high school, and I had had a really hard year at home that year before. And, you know, me and my family, we were just kind of going through some really hard patches of relationship dynamics, and there were just some really hard things. And so we went to Easter service, and I'll never forget, we were sitting facing the stage, and we were on the right hand side of the church, and our pastor was breaking down the crucifixion the way that I had never heard it broken down before. And again, I was in high school. I was 17. I didn't know really anything about church. I'd gone to a small group here and there, but right, I went for a boy. I didn't go for Jesus. Like, I was like, what is, And so we were at church, and he started to break down the crucifixion, breaking down lash by lash, like, and I had never heard the sacrifice of Jesus broken down the way that he broke it down. And I was sitting there, and all of a sudden just tears streaming down my face. It wasn't like a cry, you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
it was just a consistent feeling of the weight of salvation. And oh my gosh, I told you I wasn't gonna cry. Here I am. But just even the moment of like, "Oh, he did that for me?" Like, after this really hard year of being so confused as to what love even looks like, or what am I worth, or how, all of the different questions that a 17-year-old girl in so many different issues asks herself, and here it was being broken down right in front of me. And so, um I went up to an altar call, I got prayed for, and that was the moment I gave my life to the Lord.
Mm,
And so I got my license, started driving to Whittier to that same church. Um, it's called the Good Shepherd Family Bible Church. And so I was driving out there. That was where my aunt had gone. That's where my aunt took my mom. And so that was the church that I had known. And that was the only church I knew to go to. And so from there, I picked a Bible college to go to out of all the different colleges I could have picked from. I picked a tiny little one that had like 400 students or something. It was so small. And that was where I kind of landed with faith. I knew I needed something more than myself,
mm,
and God showed me that it
mm.
was him.
Awesome.
Mhm.
And so your family dynamic, I know you mentioned that your mom was I mean, it was Easter, Christmas, so it wasn't too consistent.
Mhm.
How has the faith in your family either grown or has it stayed the same since you've,
Mm.
found your walk?
Yeah, I would say it stayed the same. My mom, I know she knows God. She believes in God. She prays to God, but I think that there's just this line of church versus um like Jesus. And
Mhm.
I think community, all of the different things, right? I think that there have just been different things that she's experienced that maybe has drawn her away from what church can look like, and my dad, he doesn't go to church. He doesn't enjoy going to church. And I'm not really actually sure why that is. I feel like we talk about it, but he's not one to just like sit and bare his heart, and
Yeah.
so I try not to push just because I don't want it to be awkward or uncomfortable or any of the things. And I just pray a lot for them. My little brother doesn't go to church either. He's kind of rode the wave of what my home has always looked like, of like, we'll go when mom tells us to go, but she
Mm,
doesn't ever really tell us to go, so we just won't go. And yeah, I think God and the universe and the greater things are all just one big idea and concept in his mind. And um I think he has a lot of questions too. And I
mm,
think that is like the really beautiful part, is maybe with how consistent I've been with church and walking with the Lord, I hope that that brings curiosity and questions, because I know it's hard to grasp, right? Of just, he's 18, and if you don't if you don't see the relationship of God, you don't actually fully know what it could look like in your own life. And so, yeah, I think that there might just be curiosity of God. We've sat and had some conversations, and it hasn't ended in the way that I hope, but like, seeds are planted. I,
yeah.
I I believe it, and I pray all the time for them. And um yeah, I think my family, it's really looked consistent
Mm,
throughout my whole life. Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
So, I mean, usually I get into like reflective questions towards the end of the interview, but what you said right now just sparked an idea. For somebody who is on this walk and they are pretty much the only like member of their family who is on the walk,
Mhm.
how would you encourage them to remain like consistent on that? Because
Mm.
I'm sure it's easy to just say, well, if they're not doing it, it's easy to just like, oh, maybe I won't go this week. I'll stay with the family, whatever it is. So
Yeah.
what advice would you give to somebody who is maybe the only person in their family on the walk?
Hmm. Yeah. Honestly, and I'll be completely real, I've fallen short, you know? I've gone into places that I shouldn't have. I've done things Saturday night before Sunday morning, you know, because that's just what my family was doing and I wanted quality time, and I think that there are a lot of ways that that could look, you know, and ultimately I just have to say like be faithful, right? God is faithful to you, so be faithful to him. If you can say no, which is such a hard thing to do, and I have gotten so much better at it, but I used to be awful at saying no, right? My mom, let's go get a drink. Like I just want to spend time with you and we'll you don't want to hang out with me because you have church early in the morning, and it's like, no, I do, I'll come. You know, and I think stuff like that is just keep showing up, keep being faithful, talk to your people, to your community, talk to your mentors. I was very open and honest about, you know, the dynamic of my relationships with my family, and people kept me accountable. I had my best friends, my three best friends keep me accountable to showing up on Sunday. Hey, you're scheduled to serve. You're going to show up. You're not going to cancel. Hey,
Mm,
you are mentoring people. You're mentoring kids. Like you need to stay strong and stay faithful. And so I think in all of that, my advice is just to stay faithful, stay consistent, you know, and everything else will come. Your depth will grow, you know, and I think that the Lord could do so much with just a little seed of consistency, so
right.
mhm.
Yeah, and I think that's like a part that people struggle with in that situation, right? When they
Mm,
don't have the family members pushing them, but it seems like getting around community has helped you in that, right? Where you had
yeah,
people keep you accountable. So,
yeah,
can you speak to that community and what that's done for you?
yeah, oh my gosh, I think Coin specifically was a community that I prayed so hard for. It was just a small community when I started going to Coin, it was really small, and so, um, seeing the growth of it first and foremost has been incredible, but I think having even my three best friends, they have kept me so consistent. Hey, come to our small group. Hey, just come hang out at the house. Like, I want to do worship. Let's go to do a worship night on Friday. And I don't know if you have plans, but like we're gonna go. Well, we should go to the beach, or we should, you know. And I think finding friends that will call you out, call you to more, call you higher. Finding mentors, the Davilas, Maddie and Brendan, they took me under their wing and like have kept me since I met them, and I think even having people that are in this next phase of life that, you know, I one day hope to be in parenthood, and just all of the things, how they lead people in their community, like getting to sit with them and be like, you guys, I messed up. You guys, this is what I did. You guys, this is what I was, even my thoughts, right? This is what I was thinking. This is where I got caught in a sinkhole of thoughts and spiraled down into whatever, you know? People call you to more because they love you, not because they have to, not because they're paid to do it, not because of anything, but because of pure relationship. And I think if I could talk about any type of ministry, it would be just like the simplicity of discipleship. Find someone to disciple you and walk step by step behind them and see how they live their life, because truly, like, it's changed mine. I think even just my perspective of when I fall, how easy it is to be like, Lord, I've fallen. Help me get up. You know, that life alert, like, oh, I've
Yeah.
fallen and I can't get up. Lord, I've fallen and I can't get up, please. And so I think even just that of like discipleship in its entirety has shifted my complete perspective of church and community and consistency. Yeah.
Awesome. Earlier you mentioned, moving to Maui, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that's where you live.
That's
So
where I live.
it's awesome for you.
Yeah.
I wish I could live there, but
Yeah.
so what was that transition like? I mean, how did you go from Chino, California to Maui? That's a pretty big jump. How does that happen?
Yeah, it's a crazy story. So, two of our friends from Coin, her name's Paige and Justin Jenner. Her mom and dad have a house in Maui, and so we were getting really close, and we were just doing life together, and just living, and we were I don't remember how this conversation sparked up, but she was like, "We're gonna go on a trip to Maui, like, I would love to see if you wanna come with us, well, you could stay at our house, you just have to, take care of the rest of your trip," and I was like, "Yeah? Are you what? No, but let me pretend to think about it," and so we went, and it was April to May of 2023. Um, yes, 2023. Gosh, hold on. You might have to cut this because I'm trying to now actually think about. So I was in the internship starting 2024. Yeah, okay, 2023. And so I was there for 2 weeks, and I was like, "Okay, well, if we're here for 2 weeks, I wanna go to church." And so they were like, "Oh, okay, well, 2 doors down actually, lives a pastor and his family, and he pastors this church called Hope Chapel, and it's down in Kihei, like, you should go there." And so I ended up going, and I sat through the service, and it was great. Pastor Kyle is actually who taught that day, and I only met one person when I was there, and her name is Erin Marsman. Um, she'll be a character in the next part of this story, but, so then I went back, and throughout the whole time I was there, I was spending quiet time every morning, and I was praying. I would go watch the sunrise because the time difference, and I was spending time with the Lord, and I just felt this stirring in my spirit that I had never felt before, and it was a completely different experience. I was like, "What is happening? Why does this feel so new?" And so I came home, and I just went along with my life, and people were like, "Oh, how was Hawaii? Like, how was the trip?" And I was like, "It was good." I just feel like the Lord's doing something, and I don't know what it is. So if you just can keep me in your thoughts and prayers, like, I would really appreciate it. And so then I went back on a family vacation, 2023 in October with my parents, and they have a timeshare. So we went out there, and it was right after all of the Lahaina fires were happening. And so I was like, "Well, if we're there for 6 days or whatever, I wanna volunteer one of the days that we're there." And they were like, "On vacation?" And I was like, "Yeah, just can you drop me off or something?" I don't know. And so I remembered the church that I went to, and so I DM'd Hope Chapel, and I was like, "Hey, I'm gonna be on vacation in Maui. Are you guys doing any type of fire relief, anything, for
Mhm,
for the victims and stuff?" And they were like, "Actually, we have this distribution center called the Hub at the church." And so they had it set up, and it was basically like for any displaced families can go and shop clothes, food, supplies, like basic over the counter, you know what I mean, like Advil
mm,
or whatever if they needed, toothbrush, whatever. And so I was like, "Okay, that's great. Like, can I come volunteer?" And so I ended up emailing this girl who ran like connections through the church. Um, Her name's Stefa and or Stephanie Tang, and she actually is another player that will come in soon. But um, yeah, so I showed up for a 5-hour shift at the church, and the whole time I'd been praying, like, "Lord, you put this place on my heart. Why? Like, maybe this is just my brain, and just I want to go to Maui. Like, why wouldn't I want to go to Maui? Why wouldn't I want
yeah.
to live there? And so I was like, maybe it's just all in my head, and I went, and I was really prayerful going into it. I had asked Maddie and Brendan, and I'd asked Pastor Sam and Kel to pray for me and my three friends. And so I went, and this random woman comes up to me out of nowhere. She was like, "Hi, your name's Haley?" I was like, "Yeah." She was like, "Where are you from?" "Oh, California." She was like, "Okay, I don't know what it is. I saw you walk in, and this was right before I left, and she was like, "I just feel like the Lord is telling me to tell you about our internship program that we have at this church." And I was like, "You're kidding." That's insane. And she proceeds to just go on and explain to me, but at this point, I wasn't listening to a word she said. I was just completely enamored by the Lord of just like, I asked you to put it literally on a silver platter in front of my face, and here's this
You're
random woman who I've never talked to before. And so um, she tells me about the internship. She's like, "My name's Kim. You can put me down as a reference, blah, blah, blah." And I was like, "Oh my gosh." So I tell my parents when they pick me up, and um, they're like, "Okay, but are you actually gonna do it? Like, what's a year-long internship at a church gonna do for your future?"
mm,
I was like, "You're right. That's a fair point." And so I got home from my trip, and I told, the people that I'd asked to pray about it, I told them, and I was like, "I was approached with this opportunity, and the application's open in February. I don't even know if I'm gonna apply." And so I was praying. The Lord just kept giving me word after word from different people that I knew. And so during the same time, right, we're home, we're in December, coming into January, and we're doing a discipleship program at the church. And so it's a 12-week discipleship program. And
Mhm.
so me and Gato are co-leading a group. And so the last week was called Healed and Free. And so it's a big prayer session and just, things are happening, chains are breaking all over the church. And it's just a beautiful, oh gosh, I will remember that night for the rest of my life. It was so awesome. But Pastor Mike was there. He was on the other side of the church, and I remember I was so frustrated with the Lord. I couldn't hear a word for anybody else. Like I just couldn't hear anything, so I just went to the back of the church to pray. And I was pacing, and I just like was just having a really deep moment with the Lord, and he was speaking to me about something completely different. And I see Pastor Mike, and we lock eyes from across the room, and he's like, "Come here," and I was like, "Get away from me." I do not want a word that's gonna wreck my life. Just no, I'm not going. And he's like, "Yeah, come on." And so I walk on down there, and he tells me this word that absolutely wrecks my whole life, right? Tells me he doesn't know anything about my story. He tells me my whole life story, basically, and then proceeds to just give me all of these words. And I was like, "Whoa, that's crazy." So I'm wrecked. I'm sobbing, snotty, gross, and I'm about to walk away. And he's like, "Actually, wait one more second. I feel like I have one more word for you." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And he's like, "Is the Lord calling you somewhere?" And I was like, "Uh, I don't know." He's like, "Yes, you do. The Lord, like, is he calling you on mission? Yes or
Mm,
no?" And I was like, "I think so, and I don't know what that means." And he's like, "Okay, well, why do you keep telling him no?" He feels like I feel like I'm hearing him tell me that you just keep telling him no. And you need to hear it that he wants you to say yes, that he wants you to buy in,
mm.
and you're not bought into what he's trying to tell you, what he's trying to teach you, and you just need to buy in. And I was just wrecked, right? Mind absolutely blown. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, nah." Right? It's like he could have slapped me in the face with Maui and I still would have been like, "I don't know." And so I finally was just like, "Okay, Lord, I can't deny it." So I ended up applying at church actually. I went to Coin and applied at church, and I was just playing through the whole thing. And um I applied in March, on March 1st, and then I ended up getting the position for a internship, a worship internship in May.
Nice.
So it took me out there. 2 months later, I moved August 2024, and I have been there ever since.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. And how does it feel being out there? I mean, because you're out there by yourself, right? You have no family out there, or?
Right. So funny. So Erin, the first person that I met, the only person that I met my first time at Hope Chapel, ended up being my boss.
Mm,
So she was who hired me. She was the person I did my interview with. She is the one who was like, honestly, the story of the application process was kind of crazy too. But um I felt like they made it me feel so comfortable in coming. Her and Craig, who they were the worship directors at my church, and um, crazy. Craig is our worship pastor, and he was just talking to me like he just knew so much about the word. He just knew so much about the church dynamic, and I just wanted to grow as a worship leader. That's something I love, and that's something I felt like I was called to. And I just want to be able to put my best foot forward with that gifting. And so I was like, "Okay, Lord, like whatever that looks like." So we move into a house, and it's a 12-person house. It's a 12-person internship program. So I
mm,
was like, "I don't know anybody, but automatically I had 10 new friends, right?"
right.
And so there were only 11 of us my year. And I was just like, "The Lord's going to strip me of my comfort somehow, my control somehow. And if this is how he chooses to do it on a island of paradise, like so be it." So it was just one of those no-brainer things for me of just go because it's been given to you and the Lord has obviously called you here. So say yes.
Nice.
Mhm.
Okay, so you've been in Maui since you said 2024?
Mhm.
Okay. Um, what's that experience been like for you now on your own
Hmm.
in terms of your faith? I know
Yeah.
you're surrounded by community out there, it sounds like, and that's amazing, but
Mhm.
have there been any times where you felt challenged being there on your own and not having, the familiar faces? I mean,
Mm.
2024 is not that long ago, so you're still building relationships. So
Yeah.
have you had any struggles in that? situation?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's kind of strange because you would think living at a church, working at a church, being having all of your roommates be believers, right? You would think like, "Oh, easy breezy, like everything is good. You're just constantly reading your word and constantly listening to worship and all of these things, everything should be good." And I feel like in that you can get complacent. I think
Mm,
that is something that I found of just complacency with the Lord of, okay, I'm doing all of these things, right? But now it's a job, right? I'm paid to show up every day. I'm not treating it with the reverence that it needs to be treated
mm,
with. And I think that my biggest struggle the year of the internship, so August 2024 to August 2025, I think that whole time I had been wrestling with, okay, my pure faith, right? My relationship, the intimacy with God that I've built off of the backs of struggling or seeing his faithfulness or seeing his gentleness or whatever that looked like, right? And finding the balance of that, like rubbing heads with, okay, I need to show up. This is my job. I need to do it well. This is, I have to do this. Like, and almost feeling as though it became just a routine and not a relationship. And I think that that was my biggest struggle throughout the year of like, oh, but God, like i I don't know why it feels like this. So I had to remind myself whenever I'd get caught up not reading my word, getting up in the morning to do something else instead of read the word or instead of sit in worship or instead of whatever it was, like it ended up having to become a very strict discipline of like, oh, but I get the word at work, like, oh, I
mm,
get scripture every part of my day, oh, whatever. I live with believers. Like every other conversation is about God. So like I don't need to be as disciplined. Where that's not actually the reality. Like if you want to build relationship, you have to be intentional with people as well as with God.
right.
And I think that was something I needed to find on my own this last year of like, okay, set time aside, sit, talk with him, right? Like he calls himself the father, right? He is our father. And so to build relationship with your father, he wants to sit and talk to his daughter. And so I think even just making the relationship tangible of okay, I'm going to sit on my bed with my guitar and my Bible and talk to God like he's right in front of me,
Mm,
and it had to become a discipline. And it sounds kind of cheesy and corny and whatever, but it had to be that, of I need to make this as tangible as it possibly could be so that I don't forget,
yeah,
the weight of who Christ is,
right.
and the relationship with like the tenderness of God, but also the reverence of God and trying to find the balance of all of that with staying consistent. I think was my biggest struggle for sure throughout the internship year. Um, and then once internship ended, right, I came back to California for a month, so all through August, and then I went back to Maui in September, and I was living in an ohana for 2 months, and it's basically just like a little loft part that people rent out of their house. So it was like a back entrance, and it was just like a bedroom, a kitchenette, and a bathroom. Um, and I felt so isolated. I think that was my second part of the struggle, right? Struggle in internship, struggle outside of internship with my faith of like, now I'm isolated. I'm not I'm not working at a church anymore. Like I'm not surrounded by all of this 24/7 the way I was. So how do I prioritize this when I now have every excuse to make of work is hard or whatever?
Mhm,
All of the things that we in our flesh want to make excuses
mhm,
about. And so I think that was something I also had to battle in outside of internship, being faithful with what the Lord has given me. Um, and getting to sit with him again intentionally and be intentional about setting mornings aside or setting an afternoon aside. If I worked 5 to 1, going home at 1:30 and being intentional to sit with the Lord and being intentional as I was driving to pray, or to listen to worship or whatever that looked like, and even have fruitful conversation. Like I had to be intentional. My friend Stephanie that I was talking about earlier, like I ended up she lived 2 doors down from me in the place that I moved. And so she would come over and she was holding me accountable with like how I would when I would go to church and all the things. 'Cause I just had so many excuses to where it
Mm.
was like, oh, I've become too comfortable, you know, and
Yeah.
comfort can really just take you in all types of places that you shouldn't be.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I think those were the 2 things, but I think now I've gotten into a rhythm of showing up at church. I am a youth leader for our high school girls, and so showing up on a Thursday, showing up on Wednesday, making sure that I'm being consistent with the people that hold me accountable, making sure that I'm doing check-ins with my mentors, and it helps that I live with one of my mentors, and so she's great and holds me accountable in that too. But it's been so good to find the balance and to rely on the Lord to help me find that balance, you know?
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned a couple things in that answer that sparked some notes here for me. So you talked about intentionality, which I think is huge,
Mhm.
and you said it as when I pointed at you. I'm like, that's the word I was going to say. Um, and then you also mentioned isolation.
Mm.
Now, the other thing you mentioned too, I wrote it down here. It says cheesy. You said it sounds cheesy to play your guitar and play it for the Lord in that sense, right? But Sarah Hernandez, when we did her interview, she said something that stuck with me this entire time since that interview,
Mm.
of like having this image in her mind of like when we're so go go go, we're essentially walking by the Lord as he's sitting down wanting to have a cup of coffee with us, right? And
Mm.
we're just like, hey, I got to go, see you later. And we're just storming out, right? So to some, it may seem cheesy, but when you have that visual of like, he's right here with us and he just wants
Yeah.
us to sit there,
Yeah.
it's such a powerful thing because you're like, yeah, I'm making all these excuses to not read my word. I'm making all these excuses
Yeah.
to not be intentional, but the reality is he's sitting here and he's just wanting to have a conversation with us, you know? So
Totally.
I don't think it's cheesy. I think it's an amazing way to do it.
Thanks.
Now, on top of that,
Yeah.
you mentioned isolation, and that
Mhm.
has forced you into a discipline. Now,
Mhm.
I think that's amazing because a lot of times we see isolation turn into like enemy attacks, right?
Mm.
The enemy isolates us, and that's actually a common theme with a lot of the interviews, but you've
Yeah.
somehow turned that into a way to be more intentional with the Lord. So
Yeah.
how were you able to shift that from, hey, enemy, come get me, I'm by myself, to hey, enemy, I'm by myself, but I'm with my father?
Yeah. That's a good question. I feel like I have been in a season before where isolation led me to anything else.
Mm,
You know, it led me to the party scene. It led me to worldly things. It led me to giving into my fleshly desires. And it's been a couple of years, but like that stuff, you don't forget it, right? Like it the Lord uses it to remind you of where you've been to then show you where he's taking you,
mm,
you know? And I think um I had hit this like rock bottom moment in my life before where I was isolated, I was lonely, I was frustrated, I was angry at people and making excuses for myself and on all of these things, right, that I needed to hold myself accountable for, and the Lord ended up doing that for me. But isolation, I saw the other side of the coin with isolation, and I think in this last season, I knew that I was going to be isolated. Like, I knew I was prepared for that. The Lord was so kind to give me such deep community at Coin to where I knew that He was taking me and stripping me from everything that I knew. That was a big wrestle as to why I didn't want to go in the first place.
mm.
Of I had all these great things, Lord. Why are you taking me away from it?
Yeah.
But because of all of that, I think that was something that the Lord had spoke to me the second I got to the internship was I'm going to strip you of your comfort and your control. And he
Mm,
spoke that over me throughout the whole year. I just didn't realize it until the end. And I think that that was something where coming into this next season of isolation, you're stripped of everything. You're isolated. It's just you and your own space. But to the same effect of Sarah, I had heard maybe a couple of years ago now, if you close your eyes and picture like a safe, warm space, right? So I like close my eyes and think of this really nice, comfy couch with a fireplace, and somehow it's always Christmas. So a Christmas tree, and it's just so nice. And Jesus is sitting there on the couch with you, and it's like the best couch, and you just like sink into it, and he's sitting there waiting for you to get comfortable in his presence.
mm,
And I just remember getting absolutely wrecked by that of just he wants us to be comfortable, to come to
mm,
him about anything and everything. So if I'm isolated, if I feel by myself, he's waiting for me on a couch,
mm,
ready to sit and chat, ready to sit and listen, ready to speak to me if I'm ready to listen. And um I think that has been something where isolation just it didn't hold a bone to what God could have provided in that space, And so I think, and again, it's not always easy roses, butterflies, I think having people to hold me accountable to that was important too, and but also I think just being honest where you're at with your people of like, hey guys, I'm struggling today. I
Mm,
I can't read my word. I can't crack it open. Send me your favorite scripture and like I'll read that and that's what I'll meditate on for the day because I just can't get myself to do it, And
right.
if you take yourself out of isolation, like people will meet you because they love you, And I think that that is the really beautiful part of community too.
Right.
Mhm.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So we talk a lot about your faith up to this point right now, and it seems like you're really planted and rooted in your faith, which is
Mm.
it's an amazing thing to see. In that faith, though, comes trials and struggles and setbacks and things like that.
Mhm.
So, has there been a time recently where you maybe felt disconnected from the Lord, where
Hmm.
you were still going through the motions, but you just didn't really feel it?
Yeah. How recent are we talking? I
I
think,
whatever's
yeah,
the most memorable, I guess.
gosh. So I would say the biggest thing that I could talk about right now, I think, is 2022. Okay, pretty much the whole year. I had moved out of my parents' house and it was kind of a rush job of just like I needed a little bit of space, and then I think that our communication just needed a little bit of distance from each other, and um, I felt like with my parents, we were able to love each other a little bit more with distance, and that was just I didn't do it the right way, but it was the only way I knew how to do it at the time, and so I ended up moving out kind of rush, and I moved in with a friend, and that was complicated in itself, but um, I was there for a month and a half, and that ended up not working out. So I ended up couch surfing for a while, and I was still serving at church. I was leading worship. I was, in kidsmen, and I was doing all of these things. And right, I think I had in my brain two separate lives. Right, I had my church life, and I'd had all of the other things that had just downward spiraled into a pit. And so I think in all of that, um, I had struggled a lot with trusting God. I was like, God,
Mm,
I'm serving your house. Like I'm doing all of these things, but my life is literally in shambles. I don't have a home. I don't feel like I could share this with people because one, it's embarrassing. Two, what are they I don't want people to pity me. I don't want people to feel like they need to help me. But then I started to share and I was like, okay, but this feels almost like validating in what I'm sharing because I feel like people are validating my feelings and
mm,
validating my right or wrong. You know what I mean? And um I struggle with pride. So people were really lifting up my pride and but I was partying a lot and I was showing up again Friday, Saturday nights. I worked at a restaurant that had a bar and I was just showing up to work and then I was staying late at work and um I just wasn't doing what I need to be doing,
mm,
and I think that kind of you stumble hard, and so I was just on a uh what is it, a merry-go-round of like up and down, good days, bad days, going in the same cycle, same circle of lack of faith and putting on a face because I was on a stage, like leading people in a
mm,
holy space, and so I felt like, oh gosh, I have to look perfect.
mm,
And so I think that there were just so many different parts of that. And so that was consistent for a couple of months. And I hit this moment. I wasn't serving on a Sunday. I showed up and I wasn't even gonna show up to church that day. I showed up and I'd only been going to Coin a little over a year. And I was in the front row because Grandma Liz saw me walk in. So she said, "Oh, honey, you're going to come sit with me? I'm so excited." So, of course, I was going to say no to her, precious woman. And so she walked me to the front row. And we were just walking and in worship. And um, Firm Foundation had just come out. The bridge, rain came, wind blew.
mm,
The second that they didn't even sing the full song, they just tagged that bridge to something else automatically hit my face, like, was before the Lord, sobbing. Like, I haven't cried like that. Like, that was a kind of cry where it was almost like desperation and like gratitude kind
Mm,
of wrapped in one of just, and I get emotional even just thinking about that moment because it felt like I was before the Lord in that same living room. He was still sitting on that
mm,
couch, like waiting for this moment of comfort from the Lord. And I felt someone like touch my back, and it was Pastor Kelly, and she knelt beside me and she just started to pray. And I was just absolutely wrecked by the Lord, and just the idea of like, I've been running away. I've been 1 foot in, 1 foot out. I've been so lukewarm. I haven't been reading my word. I've like listened to worship because I had to, because I was committed to something, and I think in that moment, that was where I was like, oh, Lord, in this whole span of 5 or 6 months, right? However long it had been that I just wasn't trusting you, or wasn't relying on you, or wasn't believing you, or wasn't even caring enough about you to read your word, about what your truth actually says about my life. In this moment, you have completely shifted my perspective, looked into my eyes, and told me that you love me, and I think that is just a kind of interaction. If you don't know, you don't know. But when you know and you have an interaction with God, right? It's like, oh, there's nothing like it. And so I think in that moment, that's where everything shifted for me. Of even in my lowest moments, even in my that was probably the lowest moment of my life, right? And I think in that moment of just getting prayer on my face before the Lord and in reverence, right? In just pure, I'm a mess, I'm a billion different pieces, Lord, I'm trusting you to put me back together. um and the difference between like hands open and hands closed, of just like, I'm literally giving you everything that I have, so take it, and this is my moment of pure raw surrender, and um I think from there I didn't have a choice. It was almost like the Lord had just opened his arms completely open to me and let me just fall into them. And so, um, yeah, I think now, looking at moments where I may lack in faith, or looking at days that are hard, or looking at weeks that are hard, or whatever, I think back to that, honestly, of like, but his word says if he's done it once, he could do it again.
mm.
And so, Lord, you've done it once, like, and that was the pit, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I'm just stumbling a little, like, you could do it again, and I think that kind of faith is something that I've prayed for, and I that's something that he wants us all to have as his children. So,
right.
yeah.
That's awesome.
hmm
And so, who do you think continues to inspire you in your faith today?
Hmm. Um I have a couple people, actually. I would say first and foremost my aunt Sandra. She is my grandma's sister, on my mom's side, and just that woman is just so faithful. Like, even our conversations are very like short and sweet, but it's like, "Oh, that's exactly what I prayed about." Or like, "Oh yeah, that's what God said he's going to do." So like, of course he's going to do it. You know what I mean? And she's very like black and white woman,
Hmm.
but it's always like, yes, that's faith. Yes, that's the word. Yes, like, and her consistency. She's who took my mom to church,
Mm,
and like, those prayers from back then, I'm believing for in the future, you know what I mean,
yeah,
over my family. And I think that kind of faith just is so rich, you know what I mean? It's built off so many different moments of her life that were just, whether they were good or bad, you know what I mean? Like, she saw the faithfulness of God. And so, my grandma Terry, same. She'll call me. She calls me once every couple of weeks, and, okay, Mika, I'm just gonna pray for you, and then we'll spend 30 minutes just like, and she'll just be praying, Lord Jesus, hallelujah. And it is like, I'll just be sitting there crying. I'm like, oh, I know this woman knows God, Um, so I think elder wise, those are like the two women that really do inspire me. But I have so many mentors, you know what I mean? Maddie and Brendan, they champion challenge me all the time. My mentors from home, um, the Sturm family, the Knight family, like, the Marsmans, they really they do. Like all the discipleship, all of these people, these relationships, like those are those are people that have done it for me in a place that isn't home. You know what I mean? It's a new home. Um, Alyssa, Sarah, and Caro, they have done the same of just challenging me, pushing me. Like the last few years, I'm so grateful. Um, my roommates this last year, like same thing, right? There's 6 girls in a house, 5 guys downstairs, right? Like we had to push each other, challenge each other, all in different ways this last year. And so I think for the rest of my life, the Lord will keep putting relationships in my path that will do that. And I think that is like the blessing of community of like, oh, it really is never ending, right? Like you find a believer, that is automatically a brother or a sister. You look in all the letters from Paul, he doesn't say like, hey, these random people. No, it's like my brothers and my brothers,
Hmm.
this is what we are called to do, and I think that that just shows the true depth of the idea of the body. Um and it's a family. Yeah.
Nice.
Mhm.
So you mentioned there at the end that this is what we're called to do, right? This is
Mm.
what Paul says in a lot of his letters. I'm curious, what do you feel like you're being called to do?
It's a good question because I don't know. I feel like I'm trying to find the distinguishment right now of called and assignment, right? And
Mm,
I think forever we will be called to him. We are only ever called to Jesus. We are given gifts to use for the church, right? So, um I started leading worship kind of because someone else shoved me into leading worship. Like that was never so I love kids. I've always been good with kids, and so I was in kidsmen for a couple years before I started to lead worship. And um, I think that will be a call that is forever a part of my life, right? Of like the Lord has given me a gift of worship, and that is what we're all called to do, right?
mm,
As believers, is worship the Lord. But I think an assignment is to get better at the gifts that he's given me of right now in this season of life. I'm not leading worship on a Sunday, but I will lead for a small group or for youth. I'm a youth leader right now. That's my assignment,
mm,
and I think my calling, my assignment, however you want to put it, right now is geared towards these young junior, senior, even sophomore, freshman age girls that are in our youth program that are just trying to figure out what it looks like to be faithful in high school and pick college and boys and all the things that like you just it's like a teen movie, you know what I mean? It's like you're just trying to figure out life, and I think right now that's my calling, is just to walk with these young girls that the Lord has entrusted me with. Our youth program is so sweet, and I get to do it. One of my roommates from last year, she is now the youth intern this year, and so
mm,
getting to do it with her and just see like the faithfulness of the Lord in her, yes, and getting to see how the Lord planted seeds. And I had our VBS at Coin the first 3 years that we had it. I had the older kids, which I think was like 10 to 12 year olds, or 9 to 12 year olds or something. Um, I love it. Like the most beautiful thing is when you see a kid excited about going to church, because that's not kids are excited to go to the park. They're excited to go to the movies. They're excited to go to the beach, you know what I mean? But kids that are excited to go to church, like it really redefines the childlike faith aspect
mm,
of faith. And so I think right now that is my calling, is just to nurture it as best as I can and be faithful and show up and um yeah, use whatever gifts that the Lord has given me. I started to teach at high
mm.
school this last year, which is crazy because I would have never thought in a billion years that I would teach the word of God. Like I don't even like public speaking. I don't like talking in front of a group. I got nervous talking in the beginning here because I mumble and I'm just not. You know what I mean? I resonate with this like stage fright fear of however that could look. And so I think even just seeing the Lord shift in my brain the impossible to possible is super cool.
Mm,
So right now, that's just where I'm. That's where I'm at for now.
mm.
And wherever the Lord takes me after that, I'm down
I'm
for
down.
whatever, I
I'm down.
guess. I'm down. But we'll see.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So in all these struggles, it seems like you have a good understanding of God's faithfulness to you,
Hmm.
right? So what is like a tangible moment where you're like, this is God's hand. There's no doubt about it. This is the God is redirecting me. Maybe I'm going off course or whatever it may be, but I know and I feel his presence right now. Do you have a moment like that?
I do, and it's kind of a silly moment that was like the catalyst for the rest of them. So I had gotten a job for the city of Chino, and I was working their after school programs. And I was driving to go get a coffee before my shift at Walnut Elementary is where I was working. And so I was driving to go get a coffee. And from my house, you just literally take Edison all the way down to the shops or the Spectrum or wherever. And so I was like, okay, I'm either going to go to this. I can't remember the name of what it was called. It was like, it's not 85 degrees. It's another number, but it was by like Jogurt and Waba Grill and all that stuff. But if you keep going down the street, you hit Coffee Bean. And so I was like, okay, I'm probably gonna go to this place. I've never been there before. And it's closer, so I won't go all the way down to Coffee Bean. Um, but I was driving, and that's just where I was gonna go. So I was turning into the ramp to go into that parking lot, and literally swerved back into the street because I heard the Lord tell me no. Like it was like a physical. I hadn't had an experience like that yet, and so it was literally like an audible no and a physical movement of my wheel that I didn't do, and I was like, "What the heck? What was that?" I guess I'm going to Coffee Bean because I just missed this turn. So I go to Coffee Bean, right, and the whole way to Coffee Bean I was like, Lord, what on earth? I don't I feel like I was listening to worship music, but I might not have even, maybe that was just like the holiness of the moment in my brain of just putting worship music over it, you know? I get to Coffee Bean, pick up my coffee, and I'm on my way to work. My mom calls me when I'm like 2 minutes away from the school, and she's like, Haley, where are you? And I was like, oh, I'm pulling into work, you know? And she was all, okay, don't go on Edison and Pipeline because there was a shooting at the coffee shop I was gonna go to.
Really?
A full shooter went in and shot up the place and robbed the place. When I tell you, I wept in my car. I was like, Mom, you'll never guess what just happened to me.
What?
And none of my coworkers believed in God at the time. They were like into, astrology signs and
Mm.
palm reading and all that stuff, but they spoke about God. So I'm not really sure where they landed with all that. So I went in preaching the gospel. I was like, you guys, God just saved my life. Like, and that was a moment where I was like, oh my gosh, physical redirection. You know what I mean? And so when I think of redirection in my life going forward from that, I think of that moment like if I don't listen to God's whisper, he will physically redirect me, and like however that looks, if it's a closed door, if it's a no to a job, if it's a whatever, redirection from God can look literally as extreme as him turning my car wheel
Mm.
to take me somewhere away from whatever evil's going on or whatever danger there is or whatever. And so I think of that moment kind of often in just like, oh, Lord, you redirected me physically. Like I know you can do it for my future.
Yeah.
Crazy. Crazy, crazy, crazy. But I still think about that and I get
You
excited every
said
time.
you said it's a silly. That's not a silly story at
No,
all.
no, it's crazy radical, but it's like, but sometimes I tell it and I'm like, some people won't even believe that this is real because of just how radical belief it has to be. You know what I mean? Of like, I can't preach it enough that God loves you so much that he doesn't want you to be in a place with a shooter. You know what I mean? Like he'll save you from a moment because he has something better for you, or he'll sustain you through a moment. You know what I mean? If he has something better for you, or um I think of even just like all of the horrific things that happen in this country, right? With um school shootings or whatever that is, and I think of like right, you we pray as believers like, Lord, take away this evil, but like right as he sustains us, it's because there's something that he's doing that we don't know, some bird's eye view that he has that like we could never imagine or we could never know. And like, right, he saved you for such a time as this, right? If that is the case, like, why am I not going to be fully bought in if he asks me to jump? Which, right, that was a while ago. So then Maui, why wasn't I not fully bought in? Lack of faith.
Mm.
So I think it's just a constant life thing, a heart check of like, okay, you got to be fully bought in so that he can show you exactly what he wants to show you, and it's crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that sounds crazy. Not
Yeah.
silly,
No,
crazy. Yeah,
no,
crazy was right.
crazy.
That's awesome. So you mentioned that story is a catalyst to other stories. What is the other like immediate story that goes with it?
From there, I guess like redirection. Um, okay, there was a man who I would drive to Coin and I would see him like walking on the street and he was in a wheelchair. And he pointed him out to me for like a couple of weeks and I was like, Lord, I'm not just gonna go up to some random man like on the side of the road by myself. Like, give me a person to go with, and I'll go. And I just never was given the opportunity. I saw him when I was only ever by myself driving to or from church. And so one Sunday after church, I saw him again, and I was like, oh, I'm not gonna put. And there was like an entrance to this industrial area right off Schaefer, and I was literally not gonna turn. And same thing, I felt the wheel start to just jolt a little bit. And I was like, what is happening? So I turn in and I go and I talk to him and I pray. He said it was his legs that weren't working. And so he's been in a wheelchair. He's been, unable to walk and work and all these things. So which ended up ultimately bringing him to homelessness. And so I knelt before him and I put my hand on his legs and I said, okay, well, would you mind if I prayed for you? So I sat there on the side of the street with him for like 10 minutes and we were just praying over his legs. And I was like, okay, well, it was so nice to meet you. Like, I have to go, but I'll be praying for you. And he was like, okay. And he didn't tell me his name or anything. And I asked him and he just like mumbled something under his breath. And I was like, okay, well, I'm just, Lord, you know that man. And so I went home. I kept praying for him. And I was like, God, I'm not even going to pray like it's a what if. I know you're going to do it. A week later, driving to church, see the man walking on the side of the street. And I don't know if it was just, I knew it was him. I felt it in my soul that it was him. I don't know. I didn't stop. I didn't see anything. I just had this like peace from God. Like, you got to stay faithful. Like, I'm going to reroute you every chance I get to some place where you're going to see the kingdom work,
Mm.
and you're going to be called to things that you're not going to have any idea why, but like this is why, and so I got this like and I pulled into the church parking lot and I like started to pray. I cry a lot, I guess, because I started to cry again. So I was like, Lord, that's crazy. And so I'm just crying before God and I was like, wow, stuff like that, right? Those kind of redirection moments of like, it could be something as little as pulling over for 10 minutes or something as big as, you know what I mean? Like it could be anything. And so, um, yeah, that's another story, I guess, that I have of just like the Lord just healed this man, you know what I mean? And like, I don't know, it's crazy. I just can't. I remember when I first found the Lord and I would hear stories like this and I'd be like, yeah, but he did that in the Bible. Like, does he still do that now? Because Jesus isn't just walking here on earth. Like, can he still do it? And he can, you know what I mean? Like that shouldn't be a question of if he can, but when will he?
Mm.
And it's a why we don't ever get to know, but it's a thing we get to take part in anyways because he's faithful and his I can never say it enough. And I think people take it so lightly of just like how much he loves us. So yeah, crazy.
All right, Haley. Well, thank you again for being part of this interview. I mean, it's been a fun conversation so
Yeah.
far, and I do have a few more questions for you, so we can continue this on. But you know, you've been a supporter of the Narrow Collective. I know I mentioned that earlier. The narrow collective. I know you know the idea already. It's inspired by Scripture, Matthew 7:14.
Mhm.
But small is the gate and narrow the road that leads to life, and only few find it.
Yeah.
I've shared my take on it in a lot of the interviews, and one question I like to ask is the person that I'm interviewing is,
Mm.
have you read the Scripture, and what are your thoughts about it?
Yes, I have. I love that scripture. I think to some, it's very intimidating, right? Of like a narrow road that we can so easily fall off of, you know? Um, and I think for myself, I have seen the really hard parts of walking a narrow path, you know, and um I think there's a song called The Narrow Way by Stephanie Gretzinger. And I think that she words it beautifully of like in the midst of all of the hardships of this life, right? If we keep our eyes fixated on Jesus, right? Whatever we're looking at, we're going to walk straight towards. If we're looking away, we're going to walk crooked, we're going to walk sideways, we're going to, you know what I mean, driving. If you're looking down at your phone, you're going to swerve. Like if you're looking behind you, you're going to go turn as you're, you know what I mean, as you're looking. And so I think as I'm walking on this path, right? I know exactly when I start to stumble and why, right? Because I'm not looking at
Mm,
the eyes of Jesus. And so I think when I think of the narrow way, I think of like this image of, right, my father and me, his daughter, right, hand in hand walking this path because I'm not walking it by myself. And I think this idea of like this daunting, we're approaching the gates, right, of like of heaven, and there's this absolutely beautiful golden standard that we are meeting in Jesus, right? We're seeing like this holy, highest praised being, and like that is intimidating to some who don't know the like gentleness of the Father, you know. And so I think of like as we're walking, right, in the reverence that we have for God, our Savior, we're all walking hand in hand with our Father. And so when I think of like the narrow way, I'm not walking it by myself. I'm not even just walking with God, but we're also walking it together. And so I think even having been able to see the beauty of, right, when you're standing before God, it's going to be you and only you,
mm,
like holding yourself, the God holding you accountable, you know. Um, but I also see like this grace from God to be able to walk hand in hand with your people, with your friends, with your mentors, with, right, your spouse and your kids, and right, your parents, whoever is walking alongside you in your walk through this life. Um and so I think like it's just an honor. Honestly, I think when I have seen the other interviews, I hear people's stories and I'm like, "Wow, God, like who are we to deserve this grace that you have given, to deserve like chance after chance after chance, right? All of these new mercies, and who are we to deserve that, right? If I stumble, if I've stumbled before and I'll stumble again, like who am I to deserve this?" But ultimately, right, he's walking hand in hand with us like, "Okay, nope, get back on the path. Like, I love you. Come on." You know what I mean? "Oh, no, you stepped off again. Like, you're going to fall. I've fallen. Okay, let me pick you up. Let me walk you back to the path and let's keep going," you know? And I think that there is just this, some whatever it is hanging over your head that you just have to do it all yourself, right? We in our flesh want to do it
mm,
ourselves, but that's not actually truth, right? Like we're, yes, we have to be accountable for what we do. It's us that make decisions. It's us that, you know what I mean? Like I'm not saying that that's not true, but God wants to partner with us, right? Like that, just that honor is what I think of when I think of the narrow way, is that it's narrow, but it's big enough for me and God to walk side by side, you
mm.
know? It's big enough for me and my friends to walk side by side with each other. Um, so yeah,
Nice,
yeah.
nice. What would you say, in your opinion, is the most beautiful part about being on the narrow road?
Grace. I think I think grace is so beautiful because God's grace teaches you to have grace for people.
Mm,
And I think me I again, I think I told you I struggle with pride. And so I think even my pride, right, can cause me to lack grace, or
Mm,
my stubbornness can cause me to lack grace, or my judgment can cause me to lack grace. And so I think when I think of the narrow way and God's grace for me, um, I think that's the most beautiful part is seeing the grace that God has for you for others,
mm,
that he teaches us to have for each other, and that's not an easy thing to learn, and that's not an easy thing to walk in every day. Um, and so I think that is like equally my biggest struggle, but also what I think is the most beautiful.
mm.
Mhm.
So we talked a lot about your ability to stay faithful through your struggles, right? And it
Mhm.
seems like, every time that you have a struggle, that the Lord is putting somebody in your presence to either lift you up or to remind you, hey, this is who I am. This is, what I can show you.
Mhm.
Um, for somebody who's struggling on their walk right now, who maybe doesn't see God or feel God as often as you might,
Mhm.
what words of encouragement would you give them to stay faithful and committed, regardless of what they can tangibly see or feel?
Hmm. I think that my biggest initial thought was like, we as a culture care too much about our feelings
Mm,
sometimes, of and I mean, what I mean by that is like, our feelings are important, like if Pastor Sam will say like your emotions are like the window to your soul, right? And so I think like, right, God blessed us with emotions for a reason. But sometimes we base too much on feeling, right? Do I feel God in this room? Do I feel God in this worship song? Or do I do I feel him when I'm reading the word? Sometimes you don't. Realistically, sometimes you just don't feel him anywhere. Sometimes it's hard to get a grasp on where his presence is, but if I think just a reminder that you're saved, right? Like if you are saved, you have the Holy Spirit inside of you. You don't need to feel him because you know he's told you that Holy Spirit is living in you. So I think just the reminder of like, as you're staying consistent, don't think too much about your feelings, because it's not
mm,
always going to be an interactive like moment that is fueling your faith. Sometimes it's just you being consistent and showing up.
mm,
Sometimes it's um and I love Pastor Kyle at my church. He'll say sometimes, like, because he's a surfer, and so he's like, sometimes you don't want it, but you won't get better at surfing until you're out there every day. You
mm,
know what I mean? Like you'll get better as you do it. You start out with a baby wave, you just keep growing until you're surfing these like 10-foot, 15-foot waves.
mm.
I'm not a surfer, so I can't fully resonate with that analogy, but to the same extent of like the gym, you know what I mean? Or I'm trying to get into running. And so even that of like interval training, or however that looks, 30 minutes like running, and then or I'm sorry, 30-minute round, and then you're just like running till you get tired, then you take a break, and then you run for sprint for 20 seconds, and then you take a pause for whatever. And so I think of stuff like that of, okay, well, in my faith, right? In your faith, if you're going based off your feelings, oh, I feel like it today. I don't feel like it today. I feel tired. I feel emotional. I feel whatever. Um, Sometimes you just gotta forget about your feelings and show up.
Mm,
Or even better, communicate your feelings to the Lord. Hey Lord, I'm not feeling like this, but I love you and you love me and you're faithful to me. So I'm gonna sit with you, and um again, back to grace, like if you don't do that day before and you wake up the next day feeling guilty, have grace for yourself because he has grace for you, so still show up,
mm,
um and so that's my advice, is just try not to think too much about your feelings. And if you're feeling a certain way, ask the Lord, hey, why do I feel this way, or why am I struggling the way that I struggle, or why am I feeling so lazy and slothful today, or why, um because again, it's relationship. Like he is open to those things.
right.
So
Nice.
yeah.
And I guess moving into like the future of yourself,
Mm,
I'm sure you hope to remain on this faithful path and things like that. But if you could say a prayer for yourself going into this next year? I mean, we're starting 2026 really soon. Is there
Mhm.
anything that you're praying for going into this year?
Yeah. I think the last 4 months I have been battling with the Lord of what should I be doing with my life? What am I doing? Where am I going? What do I want my future to look like? Lord, I want to get married. Like, Lord, I want all of these things. I want, I have this like goal for this future that I have built up in my brain. I want to go into wedding coordinating. So Lord, like I want all of these things. What can I? And I think my prayer now after having battled with him the last 4 months about it is literally just, Lord, I just want to be so grounded in what you want for me that everything else will come. You know what I mean? Like I don't want to feel like I'm second guessing. I don't want to feel like I'm lacking in faith. I don't want to be in this lukewarm phase of life. I think my prayer for my next year is really that I just come into a space of contentment is the only word that's coming to my brain, but I don't mean content in my faith because I want to keep being challenged, but content in the season that the Lord has,
Mm,
and whether that be a waiting season, a harvest season, whether that be me tending to the soil of whatever the Lord has for me, tending to work, tending to relationships, tending to whatever. I think just that I would stay again, like as we are talking about the narrow way, like keeping my eyes locked on him. Um yeah, and I think that's truly my biggest prayer. I think if that is my central prayer for my year, everything else will fall into place.
right.
Hmm.
Next question related to prayer is if you could pray for those around you and who are closest
Hmm.
to you, what would you pray for them?
Pure salvation. I think I wanna say all these complicated things, but ultimately I pray for radical salvation. I pray that my family sees the love of Christ in a way that is so relational that they couldn't turn away. My dad has lost a couple of friends lately, and I was praying for my dad, and I was just like, "Oh Lord, like I know he's going through a hard time of just, you get older, things happen." And I was going back and forth about that, and then I just started to weep before the Lord of like, "Oh Lord, I want everybody that I know to know you. I want them to know you in every way that they could. I want them to know the depth of you. I want them to know the width of you. I want them to know how you see them." And I think even just that prayer of, Lord, give us eyes to see ourselves how you see us, can shift everything. Um, I told you I wasn't gonna need the tissues, but even just like my my like siblings, right? Like they're entering into this season of life that college, you're just open to so many possibilities, so many friendships, so many doors. And I pray that they see the Lord for who he is and his love for them, and I pray for um even there's a I can't remember if I heard it in a podcast or a quote or what, but it says if everything you prayed for this week came to fruition, what would change?
Mm,
And I felt so convicted because I was like, I'm praying for the most like superficial things, you know what I mean?
yeah.
Where I could be praying for radical salvation. I could be praying for countries and like sure, maybe I won't see the fruit of it, but my prayers aren't going void.
Mm,
And so even that like I think with prayer, I just read this book called Praying Like Monks, Living Like Fools. And I tried reading it 4 times and I just finally finished it when I was on my flight back from Michigan. And I was like, Lord, prayer can look so simple and yet so radical at the same time. And so I think even as I'm prompted to pray for the people around me, like I pray that they meet God so that they could join in, they
mm,
can partner in this prayer for salvation all over the place. Like
mm.
I pray for radical faith to arise in the people that I know, but also the people that I don't know. I pray that boldness like start to really settle into the hearts of believers, because I think even being fearful and timid and all of these things, right? It's what we go to because we're so happy to be in comfort, but like ultimately we're not even called to do that. We're not called to stay in comfort, right? We're on assignment to grow the kingdom and be uncomfortable. And so, long-winded answer of salvation. So,
Nice.
yeah.
Now I'm gonna put you on the spot here.
Oh.
If I could ask for a word that you would want to share with the people that are watching this testimony,
Hmm.
do you have one that comes to mind?
Hmm. The one word that I just think of is like, I guess it's not a word, but an idea of we're we're called holy and righteous before God. Like he looks at us with this like pure vision, right? Like he sees us as children. The Bible talks about how like children are viewed um in like their innocence and their with their wonder of God. And so I've been praying about a lot of things, and just what I just keep thinking about is like of this reflection is like God gave me the eyes to see myself the way that he sees me. And I'm not one to like look in the mirror at vanity and all of the things, right? I don't need to buy all of the designer stuff. Like I'll go out in jeans and a t-shirt and be content with whatever. And um I think sometimes we as a society look at ourselves and sometimes just see all of the flaws. And I remember I got into the bathroom and I was getting ready to go somewhere, and I looked in the mirror and I had been praying all morning, and I like it was almost as if the Lord had like taken a slip out of the mirror and like gotten rid of a divider and like let me see himself, or let me see myself the way that he sees me. He like put a lens to see myself in this like holiness and this beauty that like, right, isn't the physical, isn't any of that stuff, but it just was one of those moments where I realized that no matter how you look at yourself, how you look at your story, how you look at your struggles, how you look at even like where you feel the absolute worst, on the days where you feel unworthy, where you feel depleted, where you feel rejected, where you feel all of these different things, right? Like the Lord looks at you with these eyes that are refined into like his love. And I just remember looking and again, I cry a lot. I just was crying the whole time. And I was just like, God, it's not even like I'm looking at myself and like, oh, girl, you're beautiful. You know what I mean? It wasn't even that. It was like I was looking at myself and it was God speaking all of these beautiful things, and like that's how he looks at you and speaks to you. That's how he looks at, right, your family and how he speaks to your family, and that's how he looks at non-believers and speaks over non-believers. And I think if I could just say to anybody who's watching this, like the way that God looks at you is a billion times more beautiful than anybody ever could, because he sees you and how you were made before you even crafted in the womb, right? He sees you as something different than you are now. He sees you in all of these different aspects of your life that he's already seen, that have come and gone in his mind, right? He has ordained and anointed them, right? But in the moment where you're like before God, he's looking at you with these eyes of righteousness. And I think that in the midst of every part of this life, right, as we're going through whatever we're going through, like that is the word. Like ask every single time, God, give me eyes to see you, give me eyes to see myself, give me eyes to see this person the way that you see them, and everything will change, right? Like automatically your heart will be softened because you're not looking with your own perspective. You're not looking
Mm.
with your own flesh. You're not looking with your own anything. You're looking the way that God is looking. And it's beautiful, and it's holy. So
So earlier in the interview, you brought up this visual
Mm,
of God sitting on the couch, waiting for you to be comfortable,
mhm,
waiting for you to have a conversation with him. So let's say that was happening.
mm,
God was here. It was just you and him.
mhm,
What would you say to him?
mm. I mean, right now, the only thing I could think of is thank you. Um, I think in my life, I let myself get so consumed with so many things, so many thoughts, so many wants, so many whatever. But I think in and again, you caught me coming off a flight. Yesterday was just a long travel day, and so I got a lot of time just by myself. I got a lot of time. I was reading the word. I was reading a book called Gentle and Lowly. Um, I was just listening to worship music. And throughout all of these moments, like these very simple moments, I just sit before him and I can just say thank you. Like, thank you for bringing me home for Christmas. Thank you for the finances that you used to bring me here, even in the midst of like instability with work or with whatever. Um, Thank you for my family and my friendships that I get to come back to and know that my friends and whatever looks like back home still is the same, and things change, but they're also still the same in a way, and I just feel like sitting before the Lord, even when I was like preparing to come here today to this interview, I was like, Lord, give me the words to speak. Ultimately, Lord, though, like just thank you. Thank you for um I've started to get myself in the habit because I wake up at 4:30 in the morning to go to work.
Hmm.
And so I started to get into this habit that the first words that I speak in the morning will be thank you to God. And I feel like that is every time I sit down on the couch, right? Like that is what I want my heart to be. Oh, God, thank you. Thank you for today. Thank you for your grace. Thank you for your love. Thank you for even the little things like a sunrise, or thank you for my car starting in the morning, or thank
Mm,
you. Um, and so I think right now it just feels the same thing of just a heart of gratitude. Lord, thank you for for this moment. Yeah. Hmm.
nice. Awesome. Go ahead and press play.
Oh, oh.
Hi, sister. I am, yeah, just so proud of you for, um, yeah, letting people into what the Lord has done and is doing in your life.
Mm,
And um, it, yeah, makes me emotional to just think about the ways that the Lord has
mm.
made himself known to me through you and your life. And um, so much of
Yeah.
my journey with the Lord is, has been around emotions and what emotions mean and why the Lord gives or allows certain emotions to happen or to come in. And you have consistently been someone who has created a space for me to feel emotions, but you have always brought me back to the truth of what the Lord says
Mm,
about Himself and me, and that is that has been like more impactful than
mm,
in my journey of knowing the Lord. And I know that is a huge part of your journey and story as well. Um, you you make people feel at home, um, and that is a gift that the Lord has given you. And you make people feel comfortable. You make people feel like they can let their walls down.
mm,
You make people feel like they don't have to perform or
mm,
pretend or hide or be anything other than who the Lord has made them to be, all wrapped in love and truth. And I
mm,
think the balance of both of those things is so important. And you have learned through walking with the Lord what that means and what that looks like.
Mm.
So thank you for letting me be someone who gets to love you and know you so deeply, and who gets to see the inner workings of what the Lord
Mm.
is convicting you of and prompting you to do. And um, it is such a gift, and the Lord is expanding his
Mm.
kingdom through you in such unique and beautiful ways. So I love you forever, and I'm so proud of you and honored to know you.
Oh,
Hi, sister.
Christ. So good.
I just want to tell you that I love you so much. And even just like thinking about like what to say, I'm just reminded of just the beauty of like obedience. And I just even like, I feel like the way that I would describe like your walk with the Lord, it's been like, I even think about like Revelation song of like, I think it says like wonder, awestruck wonder.
Mm.
And I think you just embody this childlike faith
Mm.
that you like trust your heavenly Father so much, like with your life, and yeah, it's making me just emotional just thinking about like what you've said yes to,
Mm.
even though it's been hard, it's been out of your comfort zone.
Mm.
And for the Lord to tell you, like, it's gonna be hard, but I'm gonna
Mhm.
be with you. And it's just beautiful to see, like, your life laid down, Because I think, yeah, it's just beautiful to see and beautiful to witness. And yeah, just even like, just being able to witness your growth and like your trust in the Lord and your walk and your just love for people, I think it's so beautiful, and I'm honored to be able to have like a
Mm.
front row seat to that, but yeah, you embody Jesus so well. But I love you so much. Bye. Hey girl.
You swipe to the right.
Oh, yes.
Hi, Hailey. I'm like, okay, I won't cry. I'm gonna make sure. Hold it.
Sound like you.
If I cry, I know you'll cry. You're probably already crying.
You're probably.
I was sitting here trying
They
to
know me
remember
so
like the
well.
first like
Oh.
real time that we hung out, which was probably like 4 years ago, maybe even more. And oh
Mm.
my goodness, you were probably 21 years old, Hailey. That's
It's crazy.
And here you are, 25. I'm pretty sure 25. And I think it was un Treyoto. And I was remembering
Yep.
specifically the car ride, and I don't even know how I got there. I don't remember like how you must have invited me. I don't know, but it's like the thing that I mark the start of our friendship with. And I remember that car ride home, and like we had already connected about like working for the city, so like I had known you, I had watched you for a while, but something about that car ride like is the marker for me. And so I was just thinking like, even in this past season of like having difficult moments with like our families and our mothers,
Crazy.
I'm like, sometimes when I have to really sit and say like, Lord, what are you doing with this? I like, one of the first things that always comes to my mind is like, but this is how I got Hailey in my life, and I would never ever change that for the world. I don't know if we would have like connected as much as we did without having like trauma bonded over our moms. And then I was just thinking like, how beautiful it is that the Lord like will take our wounds and like let that be the thing that is our ministry, and let that be the thing that like propels his like gospel forward and refines us and makes us look more like him.
Yeah.
And oh boy, do we look like him more because of what we've struggled through. And I just think like how much less weight it felt like, even when it was really heavy, how much like that was removed when I had you by my side, and there was just like, this is so not easy, but at least I literally can link arms with you. And nope.
Cry.
Oh no, I can't cry at work.
It's like she responded to you in the moment.
Just like, oh my gosh, my hand's a little shaky because I'm gonna cry. I just think about the fact that, like, because you're so similar to me and our brains are just like the same in so many ways, I think of you and I think of the person that like I can like break in front of, like that I can lay my guard fully down in front of. And I know exactly what it looks like when you pick me up, like the way that you like contend in prayer for me, the way that you just like give me the biggest hug. Like some people are like, oh no, Alyssa doesn't like hugs, so let's not hug her. And I'm like, but from the people I love hugs. And like, you know those things. And even if I'm like, no, I don't want a hug, you're like, you want a hug, so I'm giving it to you.
Yeah.
And that just like those little things, those tiny things of where like I know that you just understand me are so huge for me and so pivotal in my life. And you do that for so many people. And like I can look around at our community and even not being like in it in the same way, I still see those touches. I still see that impact. I still see the fruit of what that looks like. And you're doing it even from across the ocean. So I just know the Lord has such massive, massive plans. Even like thinking of your music, I'm like, if my little Spotify rap, your song would literally be on there, and it's not because like it's the most I don't even know, it like sounds, it's like it literally ministers, Hailey, and I listen to it so freaking often, probably because I just miss you too, but truly that song has gotten me through hard seasons. And I just know that like I am not at all the end of that. Like I think that your voice, not just like your singing, not just your music, but your voice and the authority that it carries and the power that it carries will reach places that you never even thought possible. So I just feel lucky that I get like a front seat to that. And I am so thankful for the ways that you have changed me, impacted me, held me when I needed to be held, picked me up when I needed to be picked up, called me to more, laughed with me. You're the funniest. Hopefully you
I know
can
that's right.
hear that whisper with me. I'm so freaking excited to spend this week with you. Yeah. I'm just excited for like what the second half of your 20s will look like, because the first half was so just amazing.
Yeah.
And I just love you so much. There's no one I'd rather be confused with more than with you. My twin.
My twin.
So I'll see you later today. I love you so much. And I am so proud of you for sharing your story. Bye. Included voice memo.
That's crazy. 2 tissues. Oh my gosh. Well, thanks.
Thank you.
Those are my best friends in the whole world, so. Gosh, I'm gonna like ugly cry. Thanks. That was so nice. Yeah.